So this evening's talk is a potpourri, hopefully something for everyone, since we have such a wide variety of people here. So we're going to explore several things, and they'll be kind of like Dharma snacks. I got the phrase from Jen. I think it's just beautiful, a little Dharma snack. Snack. So we have several little topics that I think will help, especially our new practitioners, really get a sense about what we're doing. Yeah. So first thing we'll talk about is some historical background on the origin of mindfulness, the main discoverer. So we'll talk a little bit about the discoverer. We'll talk about why we're doing this mindfulness thing anyway. We did have a survey that, we can share maybe some of the results, why we're here, We'll talk about what mindfulness is and what it isn't. And even experienced practitioners can lose touch or drift away from the true integrity of the practice. So it pays to begin at the beginning now and then. And since this retreat is entitled Foundations of Mindfulness, you can guess we're going to do just that. And we're also going to explore how the path can skillfully unfold, especially when we weave certain qualities of the heart and mind into the fabric of our practice. And these heart and mind states are fertilizers for practice, actually. And this weekend we'll focus on one particular one that we'll talk about a little bit later. And I know for many of you, this is your first residential retreat and possibly the first Dharma talk you've ever listened to. And this is the wisdom part of retreats, where teachers offer teachings that apply to the topic of the retreat. You may hear some things that might be hard to get your head around, or maybe some things you want to take notes on. And it's fine to take a note or two, but at the same time, try to just absorb it all as best you can without feeling the need to understand every single bit of it right now. Yeah. So first things first, before we go any further, we need to give credit where credit is due, and the first mindfulness teacher would be Siddhartha Gautama, who became the Buddha. He had spent some time hanging out under a Bodhi tree, investigating. So I'm highlighting this word, investigating the nature of his mind. He had a doozy of an aha moment, a doozy of one, when the cause of suffering and the path to freedom from suffering became clear. And we'll talk about that in depth tomorrow. After that, he refined the practice of mindfulness and conceived of this whole integrated psychological system that we call the Dharma, or in a more secular context, Buddhist psychology. So Buddhist teachings are really a science of mind, and that's a quote from the Dalai Lama himself, so I'll go with that. A science of mind, right? It's important to understand we're not doing religion here. No, we're engaging in mind science. That's what we're doing. And then most people who truly come to understand Buddhism can see that the word religion, as we usually define it, doesn't apply because, in Buddhism, there's no supreme power such as a God that can intervene in human affairs. No one tells you what to believe. In fact, you're encouraged to curiously investigate, there's that word again, your own moment-to-moment experience to see for yourself what's true or not true. He famously said, "Be a lamp unto yourself," emphasizing self-reliance on your own wisdom rather than external authorities or beliefs. Yeah. He also famously said, if you think you know the answers, then it's time to start questioning. So he would continually encourage beginner's mind, and nowhere else maybe in our lives but on retreat is a chance to practice beginner's mind continually for a few days. So investigation and beginner's mind, yeah. A 9th century Buddhist Zen master was known to say, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Yeah. And in fact, one of the most pivotal books I read in graduate school bore that title. If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Now, that was a few decades ago, and I remember loving the book, but I don't remember anything about it. It must be about this talk I'm giving right now, but I actually don't remember it. I think I still have it torn up somewhere, but... and of course, we don't take that literally. We're not killing the Buddha, but again, the idea is to provoke us to discard preconceived beliefs, as well as reliance on external authority. That we should discover the truth for ourselves. Another interpretation of that phrase means not to worship the Buddha, or that you already are the Buddha. And remember, we spoke about that earlier during the refuges, about our own inner wisdom and compassion that's always inside us. So we truly are already Buddhas, every one of us. Yeah. So the only focus of the Buddha was what, when we do it, frees us from suffering. That was his mission, and ours as well, I think. In my own work as a psychotherapist, I've been exposed to almost every technique there is, except maybe some of those trendy microdosing of mushrooms treatments that are all the rage these days. But in 30 years' time, I've never seen any method of psychological treatment be any more successful at promoting lasting ease and well-being than this beautiful, beautiful path that we call the Dharma. Yeah. I consider the Buddha to be the world's first clinical psychologist. Yeah. So that's an origin story about Buddhism, and that was the first Dharma snack. Now, the next Dharma snack. Why are we here, right? What brought us to mindfulness? We have some survey results. Thank you all for doing the surveys. So 72% came originally or are interested in mindfulness to meet life's challenges more effectively. And really what that means is to meet our own suffering more effectively. Life has challenges, it's true, but it's how we deal with our discomfort with those challenges that's most important, right? It's not really life, it's like here, right? 72% of us came to enhance emotional well-being and helping with stress. So those are the top three. One of the other questions was, what are we most interested in? We've got self-compassion, 80% self-compassion. Daily activities is interesting. You'll have all this time to practice those informal activities that Matt taught you about, so you get a chance to practice mindfulness with daily activities. 70% said they wanted techniques. I think that's awesome because you're going to learn some. And managing difficult emotions, right? And then we have what we want from this retreat. Compassion, top of the list, compassion. To deepen my existing practice. That's beautiful, right? And better emotional health, right? And it's so interesting that self-compassion and compassion in general is a top contender here. By its very nature, when we long for compassion, it's in response to suffering, right? All the ways that we're hard on ourselves, judge ourselves, pressure ourselves, and self-compassion is an antidote to that, right? And it's an antidote to stronger forms of suffering, despair, loneliness, hopelessness, anger, sadness. Compassion and suffering go together. And there's a lot of suffering these days, and compassion is needed. So we'll get to do some self-compassion tomorrow. This evening we'll talk about those pressures that we put on ourselves to be better, the self-improvement addiction and how that addiction can follow us on retreat, right? Tomorrow we'll do that self-compassion. So, we all want to feel better. We want to meet life's difficulties more effectively. We want to suffer less, right? And we use suffering to refer to anything that's not well-being. I know it's a kind of a dramatic word, suffer, but we're suffering when we're just kind of resentful of something, or we're just like, oh, I don't like that. Anything that's not well-being, we call suffering here. All right, so just to, some semantics. And, compassion is an antidote to all forms of human suffering. So, so we're here to suffer less and to maybe find some compassion. That would be kind of the synthesis of what everyone said. But look, it's one thing to recognize why we're here, what we're yearning for, but it's another thing to try to use that practice to get that thing. Because that actually works against us, trying to get the relief you seek by using the practice. Because it's a kind of striving, and it's kind of insidious, this striving thing that happens. So there was some really interesting research, 2022, out of a university in New York, where they studied the meditation practice of about 100 people. And about half of them said that they meditated to manage difficult feelings and eliminate stress. That sounds good, right? I think I started that way. Anybody come to, seems like some of us came to mindfulness for that. But the other folks said that they started meditation to be better at opening up and accepting whatever thoughts and feelings may arise. Well, that sounds good too, right? I kind of like that. They both sound good, right? Anyone think they know who is not currently reading my book? Which group actually got all the traditionally accepted benefits? Group A, raise your hand if you think the stress people. I don't want to have stress people. No? What about group B? Raise your hand. Yeah. The second group got the benefits. They experienced less anxiety, fewer worries, less depression, better self-awareness, right? Those who meditated to eliminate or change difficult feelings, they didn't get the benefits. So the intention behind this work we do matters. It matters. So when our intention is to be able to open up to experience, rather than change it, block it, or push it away, right? We get the ease and freedom we seek. Yeah. So let's think about how that might be, right? So let's say you're trying to make unpleasant thoughts and emotions go away or stop. Stop. You're really causing a logjam in the natural flow of experience, right? Because most of you know when you think about it, even new folks, that thoughts and emotions come and go. They're impermanent, right? And when we don't get in the way of that, when we don't dam up the river of our experience by trying to stop it, our difficult thoughts and emotions arise and pass unimpeded. They arise and pass unimpeded, and so we suffer less, right? So new students, we use this word resistance to refer to this habit of making a problem of our experience. So thoughts, emotions, physical sensations, I don't want this, I don't want to feel this way, I don't want to think this way, right? So we call that resistance, all right? And right now, we're not talking about resisting or making a problem of the world outside you. We're here to do work inside of us, right? The world outside, there's really big problems, and sometimes we have to resist, right? But we have to resist without inner resistance. So here, we're working on our inner resistance to how things are. So fundamentally, we're talking about this tendency to not want to have the emotions, thoughts, or physical sensations we're in fact already having. So that sets the stage for friction, right? So you're already having, let's say, emotions, but at the same time you're resisting it, friction. That's suffering right there. So when we resist and make a problem of experiences, we don't get more resilient to them, right? We actually get weaker. We need to increase our stress resilience, not weaken it. And by increasing our stress resilience, we don't mean not having difficult thoughts and emotions. We mean being with them without being toppled by them. Being with them without being toppled by them, yeah? And then you'll also hear us use the word clinging, possibly more than resistance, in reference to the cause of suffering as well. So you already heard during the refuges, it's really both and. We resist what's unpleasant, and we cling to or seek out what's pleasant. So they're flip sides of the same coin. So another quality of the heart and mind. So remember that word investigation, how I said it twice. Investigation, one quality, important. Another quality of heart and mind that can nurture our practice is non-resistance and its cousin, non-clinging. So we might combine these two into the word acceptance, right? A critical part of what we do is to 100% accept what's happening right now in you, not in the world, in you. And it sounds simple to say that, right? But not so much, and especially not on retreat. I mean, how many of you who have been on retreats have set the intention to practice with acceptance on previous retreats, like 100% acceptance, what happens on retreat, and then found yourself experiencing a multitude of resistance and clings? Anyone? Like, yeah, all right. So it's not easy, and if you're newer, know that there will be resistance and clings. So a quote from the Buddha: you may not get what you're seeking so much, but you may lose or let go of things that have been an obstacle to your happiness. And by obstacle, we're talking about resistance and clinging. Yeah. So while we're on the subject of suffering, I'm reminding you yet again about the 10-point scale, right? Retreats can be physically, emotionally, mentally challenging. New practitioners, remember, if you find yourself suffering above a 4, leave me a note. I may write you a note back. We may meet individually. It'll depend. But leave me a note and then look for a note back. Yeah. I can't say this often enough because as new practitioners, your mindful muscles are still developing. And those of you who have worked with me before on retreat know what to do. Find some refuges. All right, so that was why we're here, and moving to the next Dharma snack. Next one, what is mindfulness anyway, and what isn't it? So we'll use a definition that we use so often in MBSR and other kinds of training venues. You have this definition on the back, on your handout under the precepts, that's what it is. So go ahead and turn it over, take a look at it. This definition, the awareness that emerges from paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally to the unfolding of experience moment to moment with kindness and generosity. Wow, that is a lot of words. It's true. It's a lot of words. There's just John Kabat-Zinn's definition, but it's quite wordy. But it identifies some really, really key parts to mindfulness. So first of all, it's an awareness that emerges. So it's not always there, right? It emerges the minute you orient your awareness to what's happening right now with you. If you're out there at the law and then you orient your awareness, what's happening with me, mindfulness emerges right there, right? It's also something that we practice in a particular way, not a willy-nilly way. And it's the way we're taught by teachers. It's not easy to figure it out for yourself, and you could listen to guided practices every day in silence for like 5 years and not progress in the same way that you might when working with a teacher in a class, individually or on a retreat like this. Yeah. It's also a deliberate practice. It's on purpose. It's not usually accidental. Yeah. And then it's 100% accepting, kind, and generous. And you're going to hear this word acceptance a lot, right? And then in the definition, by unfolding of experience, we mean what we call the triangle of awareness. So for new people, triangle. Physical sensations, thoughts, and emotions. That's all we have as human beings. There's nothing more. And we have a body, and we have a mind, and some emotions. And emotions are interplays between thoughts and physical sensations, along with some neurochemicals involved, like cortisol or oxytocin, right? And then emotions flow. They arise and pass continually. So in mindfulness, then, that's kind of what we're doing. We're watching our thoughts and emotions and physical sensations arise and pass in awareness, right? Interestingly, though, there are some things that aren't in that definition that many people associate with mindfulness. So you could glance at it again or not, but you'll notice that the word focus isn't there. It doesn't say keep your mind on something. It doesn't say that. Did you think you were supposed to keep your mind on something? We train in concentration to keep our mind on something, but that's just to lay the groundwork for real mindfulness. For real mindfulness, right? But focus or concentration is not the end goal. I mean, think about it. Many of us can be deeply focused at times, and we could be really good at focusing. Like even get in a state of flow, but I don't know, does that ability eliminate suffering? Right? I don't know about you, but I'm a really good focuser. I could focus for hours on something and never think about it. I could just lose myself. But I still suffer. So I hate to break it to you, focusing on the breath is not going to free you from suffering. Right? Concentration doesn't equal happiness. A lot of people think concentration, it's a skill that we need to investigate everything else that happens around us, right? But concentration doesn't equal happiness. So rather than the word focus, you'll hear us use the word awareness as a more accurate description for our mental activity when we're practicing. To be aware of something rather than focus on something. It's different, right? So let's try this. Close your eyes, and we'll do a quick experiment. Okay, so now focus on your right big toe. Focus on it. Okay, open your eyes, kind of shake your head and get that out of your experience. All right, close your eyes again, and now become aware of your right big toe. Yeah, good. Open your eyes. Raise your hand if it felt different somehow. Yeah? It's different, isn't it? Yeah. Awareness. So awareness rather than focus is a key factor. So this is one of those words. I'm throwing out words. We had investigation. We said that word. Then we had acceptance. We said that word. And now we have awareness is a key factor in mindfulness. And then the definition, back to the definition. The definition says nothing about clearing or emptying the mind, does it? No, because for most of us that isn't even possible unless we're asleep. And even then probably our minds aren't clear either, or dissociated or dead, right? So no, we're not trying to clear our mind, new practitioners, right? Because we're actually not trying to change anything. Right? It's such a relief not to try to change anything. Yeah? And you'll notice, again, the definition. There's no word like peace or calm or relax. Yeah. In actuality, when we do start to pay attention in a particular way, sometimes you experience anything but calm. You could become more agitated, more upset. You could have really difficult thoughts, painful emotions. It could be hard, right? But that's a good thing, because if we allow a painful experience to arise in a trained mind, we can more skillfully navigate the difficulties of life, right? And we're here to train our minds. That's why we're here, right? There's a Pali word, vipassana, which we use to identify the kind of practice we do, and that means to see clearly, not to get calm, right? Okay. Looking at the definition yet again, there's nothing about trying or struggle or forcing or work, right? We often use the word striving to refer to this less helpful mindset, this idea that we have to get better at it, that we have to have an A. We have come to retreat to get an A at retreat practice. So we have a habit, don't we, of trying to change our suffering or eliminate it. But in so doing it, we can't understand the source of it then. So we have to study our suffering if we want to gain freedom, and we have to study it with the mindset of a scientist, like a non-preferential mindset. A scientist observes what's happening without liking or disliking what she sees, right? A true scientist doesn't try to change the outcome. Right? We're not trying to change the outcome here, right? All right. So to review, fundamentally, mindfulness is about awareness. Awareness which is directed at our own inner experience so that we can gain insight into the source of our suffering. It's fundamentally a process of investigation, just like the Buddha did in his sojourn under the Bodhi tree. We investigate the nature of our mind. We don't shut our mind off. Yeah. Mindfulness also has a quality of acceptance, remember, non-resistance, non-clinging combined, and finally, non-striving. For this weekend, I particularly invite all of you, to make the quality non-striving an intention for your time here. Non-striving, yeah. We spend most of our waking hours and probably some of our dream time trying to be better at things, trying to be a better mother, a better worker, a better manager, a better employee, a better cook, a more fit, a better eater, a better and a better and a better, it goes on and on. Right? It's like every moment of every day is a self-improvement project. Yeah. On retreat, these mind habits are often the stars of the show. Has anybody noticed that? Who's been on retreat? Stars of the show right there. We think we're going to get it perfect somehow, right? We're going to do it right. And in doing so, in having that idea, we fall into what we call mana. Mana is a Pali word used for a quality of measuring yourself, right? It's really translated as conceit. But it's how we compare ourselves to others or some ideal we have. We compare ourselves to the yogi next to us who sits so still and they never move, and we feel less than. Or we think, wow, I'm pretty good at this. I haven't missed any sits. Piece of cake, right? Comparing, right? And there are three kinds of comparing, and you can watch for this on retreat. One is when we compare ourselves maybe better than others, or then when we feel less than others, or when we feel equal to others. That's still measuring, isn't it? It's still measuring, right? All of these are considered mana, comparing ourselves to some ideal, measuring ourselves, and all the ways that we feel not good enough. It's painful. It comes with jealousy, judging, and yet you may notice mana, and then you may judge yourself for experiencing mana. So I encourage you to not judge that you're judging, right? This is just your mind's attempt to feel safe and secure and be accepted, to not get kicked out of the tribe and die, because we have this ancient programming to be accepted, right? Here on retreat, do your best to stop that trying, right? Let go, stop striving as best you can, right? However you are this weekend, whatever comes up, there's nothing wrong with it, nothing. Give yourself permission to be okay with whatever unfolds as you do your best with the teachings this weekend. And we won't be perfect at it. So one suggestion is to simply use that label mana when you notice this measuring and striving, this comparing. When you label something, you step back a little bit from it, and you can hold it a little more lightly. So really, our practice is about continually stepping back from striving, continually. In fact, if you notice this during a sitting meditation, sometimes if you're starting to strive when you're sitting, like concentrate better, don't wander, mind, don't wander as much, sometimes you can start to lean forward a little bit, and it feels like the striving thing. So if you notice that, just settle back, lean back a little bit. See what happens, right? Yeah. So that was just a little about what mindfulness really is and what it isn't. Keywords: awareness, acceptance, investigation, non-striving, right? That's the third Dharma snack. Doing pretty good? Yep. Moving on to what the path looks like, right? So firstly, it's a gentle and gradual path. It's a path of acceptance and love. It's not forced, and there should be ease and kindness on this journey, right? But the Buddha himself didn't start out gently. As was the method at that time in history, he relentlessly pushed himself to the limit to find the answers he sought. He'd been raised in a protected world where his father was a king, and they refused to let him go outside of the castle because a soothsayer had told them at his birth that he would be a great king or a spiritual teacher. And they, of course, wanted the first. And so they kept him from seeing the suffering of the world. But like most young people, he didn't always do what his parents wished. And one day, as a young man, he got his charioteer to take him outside the castle walls. He rebelled, right? But over controlling parents, rebellion, that. Even back then, that's what happened. It's kind of universal, right? But what he found outside the castle walls was extremely painful for him, coming from those peaceful and pleasant world that he had been raised in. So poverty, sickness, old age, death, despair, cruelty. It was unimaginable suffering. He also saw a spiritual teacher, a monk in orange robes, who seemed untroubled in the face of all of that suffering. And the monk seemed to be of service, helping others. So he was drawn out of curiosity to that path. He had questions that he wanted answers to. So he left home. His parents brought it on themselves. Everything starts in childhood, right? But we can have gratitude to his parents, right? So for many years then, he wandered the region studying under various teachers of the day. In that time, spiritual quests were harsh, driven. They were not gentle and gradual and kind. He starved himself almost to the brink of death. He engaged in forced mind control and breath control, and he didn't find the freedom he sought. He even physically flagellated himself. So he was kind of a perfectionistic workaholic. Sound familiar? Right? He fell into the trap of self-improvement, right? And because of this, he almost died. This statue right here, this statue is called Emaciated Buddha, and you'll be able to look at it. This represents that time in his life. It's rather frightening to look at. It represents that driven journey that he was on, and this we call burnt out Buddha. Right? Burnt out Buddha. Working too hard to be better. Right? I have him here in the hall to remind us to practice 100% acceptance of our experience, non-striving, right? That is true mindfulness. If you want to look closely at him, I'll have him on the information table. But eventually, he decided to stop all that striving and simply sit and watch his mind to see if the answers appeared. And that is exactly what we do here. But we too sometimes strive to force our mind into submission because we think it'll make us a good meditator or enlightened or in control, right? So we, in our modern world, are often burnt out as well. This is us, right? This is us. We strive and strive, trying to do everything better, trying to be better. So this path we're on is not that. It's gentle, it's non-rushed, accepting, and a kind, non-striving path. Second, it's a three-pronged path. It's a path of mental training, mental discipline. This is the practice we're learning. It's a path of wisdom, the Dharma, as well as a path of ethics for wholesome behavior that support practice and wisdom. Some of the ethics were discussed earlier during the precepts, right? And all three of these, when practiced together in an intentional way, lead us to freedom from suffering. Here on retreat, we engage in all three of these prongs. We practice the mental discipline, we listen to Dharma talks, the wisdom, and woven throughout the fabric of this retreat are the precepts of ethical behavior. Right. There's a beautiful, beautiful passage from an early Buddhist text that it describes the way our path unfolds. When the gods pour rain with heavy drops and crash thunder on the upper mountains, the water flows down along the slopes and fills the mountain clefts, rifts, and gullies. And when the mountain clefts, rifts, and gullies are full, they fill the little ponds. And when the little ponds are full, they fill the big lakes. And when the big lakes are full, they fill the little rivers. And when the little rivers are full, they fill the big rivers. And when the big rivers are full, they fill the great ocean. And in this same way, the path of practice unfolds. He was such a poet. Yeah? The image of fluidity that this practice invites is reminiscent of the river of change that we talked about in the fall, the river of impermanence, ever-changing flow of life. The way that we can flow naturally through life when we don't resist it, right? It's so liberating not to battle with life. You'll notice that water doesn't resist. It can't, right? It flows around obstacles or possibly over them rather than fighting them. Even when water seems to be still or stagnant in a pond, it will inevitably seek the slightest way forward, trickling into the earth, maybe coming out elsewhere as a spring. And it's important to note that it's not an uphill journey, right? It's not a climb. In the river, it's not a climb, it's a float or a flow. That's what we're doing here. There's a Zen saying that points to this: don't push the river. And we're not going to push the river. That's the whole point. But we exhaust ourselves swimming against the stream much of our life, yeah? And that passage that I read specifically points to the path of practice, not just our life, as being fluid and persistent, flowing. So the storm in the mountain peaks that crashes thunder with heavy drops represents the suffering that turns us toward the path. Yeah. So from the storms of life, our practice begins, gains momentum in little rivulets and flows through many twists and turns and obstacles, barriers, but it always moves downstream, getting ever more powerful. It's cumulative. It takes on an energy and power of its own. All begins with suffering, though, right? Without suffering, there would be no path. So I often tell students to bow in gratitude to their suffering, in the way one would bow in gratitude to a teacher. Practice develops best when it's fluid and flexible, working around and through the obstacles in our life, obstacles of practice. It develops at different speeds, at different times in our life. It can be like rapids, where growth is choppy and fast. It could be scary. That could happen here. You could find yourself just tumbling. Or sometimes the path seems like it's going nowhere. Like that still water in a pond, you could feel stuck, you could lose steam, you could even stop practicing for a while. It's not a straight line and it can't be forced or pushed. But that doesn't mean we take a willy-nilly approach, right? The word practice does imply mental training. So we do our best to maintain some kind of commitment to discipline, regular training, and study. We do it, though, without striving, without that self-flagellation. The issue is we can't predict where and how fast practice will take us. It's skillful just to trust that flow. There's wisdom in allowing it to be fluid, to accommodate the changing conditions of your life. So it's about bringing flexibility and ease to our practice, while at the same time, steady discipline and intention. Kind of a balance, isn't it? The passage also metaphorically illustrates the interconnected flow of conditions leading to enlightenment or liberation. And we can consider those three prongs as those conditions. Imagery suggests as the natural and cumulative process of spiritual development underscores this inevitability of the process when conditions are properly cultivated. Conditions of mental discipline, wisdom, and ethics. Yeah. So, summarizing all the snacks. we came because of suffering, but trying not to suffer defeats the purpose. Our path is one of awareness, investigation, acceptance, and non-striving. It's gentle and gradual and kind. It progresses and flows, building from wisdom, mental discipline, and ethics, always leading towards more and more ease and less suffering. So, therefore, let us bow to our suffering, because without it, we wouldn't have found this beautiful, heartfelt path. Yeah. And then a quote from Alanis Morissette before we finally drop fully into the silence and take our first very brief walk. She says, "Thank you, India. Thank you, terror. Thank you, disillusionment. Thank you, frailty. Thank you, nothingness. Thank you, consequence. Thank you, silence." Yeah. So we'll drop into the silence now, just for a few minutes before we'll have a very short walk. And thank you for your kind attention.